Have you ever wondered what happens when the boy who made your life a living hell suddenly looks at you with eyes that say he wants you, not as a victim, but as someone he can't live without? This is not just another romance. This is a BL webtoon love story, a yaoi manhwa arc, a gay love story that takes one of the most painful tropes, bullying, and flips it into something tender, shocking, and unforgettable. Imagine walking through high school corridors every day, head down, praying no one notices you. But of course, he notices you. The tall, popular, athletic boy with that cruel smile. The one everyone wants to be around, except you. Because for you, his attention feels like punishment. And yet, what if, buried beneath his smirks and taunts, there was something else? Something he didn't understand himself. What if every shove against the lockers was hiding a heartbeat he didn't want anyone to hear? Soft whisper. What if the bully was never just a bully, but someone who was terrified of how much he actually wanted you? This story asks a dangerous question. Can love grow from pain? Can two broken boys find healing in each other when their beginning was made of cruelty? Stay with me, because by the end, you'll see how this manhwa love story turns enemies into something far more intimate, far more complicated, and far more real than either of them ever expected. Our protagonist, let's call him Eli, 17 years old, quiet, bookish, the kind of boy who feels safest at the back of the classroom, hidden behind novels and sketchbooks. Eli is smart, too smart sometimes. His grades are perfect, his teachers adore him. But in the cruel economy of high school, intelligence doesn't buy protection. And then there's Damien, tall, broad-shouldered, captain of the basketball team, the kind of boy who never walks alone. His friends orbit him like satellites, laughing at every joke, following his lead. To everyone else, Damien is golden. To Eli, he's a nightmare. From the first year of middle school, Damien singled him out. Maybe it was Eli's quiet nature. Maybe it was the way he avoided eye contact. Maybe it was just because Damien could. Pencils snapped in half, notes stolen and read aloud, a cruel nickname whispered in the hallway, and worse, sometimes silence, sometimes just the look, that smirk across the classroom that made Eli's stomach twist. This wasn't just harmless teasing. This was years of Eli shrinking smaller and smaller, afraid to be seen, afraid to exist too loudly. The trope is familiar to anyone who reads BL webtoons or yaoi manhwa, the outsider and the golden boy, the one who hides and the one who shines. But what no one knew, what not even Damien himself wanted to admit, was that his obsession with Eli wasn't built only on cruelty. It was built on fascination, softly, because Eli was different. Eli didn't chase him, didn't beg for his attention, didn't care about his popularity, and that drove Damien insane. Years passed like this, until one day, everything shifted. That day was ordinary, or at least, it was supposed to be. The sun slanted lazily across the classroom windows, students buzzing with chatter about upcoming exams. Eli was in his usual place, hunched over a sketchbook, his pencil tracing quiet lines of a fantasy world he'd drawn for himself. Castles, forests, dragons, anywhere but here. Then came the voice, low, mocking, familiar. Well, if it isn't the little artist hiding in his corner again. It was Damien. His presence filled the room before his shadow even fell across Eli's desk. His friends hovered nearby, snickering. But something was different this time. Instead of snatching the sketchbook or crumpling the page, Damien leaned down, too close. His hand pressed flat on the desk beside Eli's drawing, trapping him there. "You've gotten better," Damien muttered, eyes flicking down at the sketch. Didn't think you could. Eli froze. His pencil hovered mid-air, his knuckles white from gripping it too tightly. His brain scrambled for the familiar rhythm of survival. Don't react, don't engage, don't give him the satisfaction. But the words Damien had just spoken pierced through every shield Eli had built over the years. Did he just say, "I'm good"? It didn't make sense. This was Damien, the tormentor, the bully, the one who had made the past 3 years feel like a sentence Eli couldn't escape. Compliments weren't part of Damien's vocabulary, not for him. And yet, here it was, sharp and unexpected, like glass glinting in the sun. Eli didn't dare look up, but he could feel Damien's presence looming over him, heat radiating from where the taller boy leaned against his desk. His shadow spilled across the page, swallowing up the lines of the castle Eli had been sketching only moments ago. He prayed Damien would walk away, just laugh, shove him, and be gone. That was the routine. That was what Eli understood. But today, Damien didn't walk away. Instead, he dragged the sketchbook right out from under Eli's hands. "Hey," Eli's voice cracked, equal parts fear and fury. He lunged forward, but Damien's grip was unyielding, his long fingers curling around the edges of the notebook like it belonged to him. From the side, Damien's friends laughed. It was the same chorus Eli had heard 100 times before, mocking, jeering, ready to see their leader humiliate the quiet boy again. But Damien didn't mock. He flipped through the pages slowly, deliberately, his eyes scanning each drawing with an intensity that unsettled Eli even more than cruelty ever had. Line after line, sketch after sketch, landscapes Eli had poured his loneliness into, characters he'd invented when reality became unbearable, half-finished portraits of faces no one in class had ever seen. Every page was a piece of him, and Damien was holding it all. "Stop," Eli hissed under his breath, his face hot. He reached again, but Damien shifted just enough to keep it out of reach, ignoring him. His friends started to tease. "What's he even drawing flowers? Look at those little doodles. Man, he's such a weirdo." Eli braced himself for the sting of Damien's voice joining in, for the cruel nickname, for the laughter. But Damien stayed silent. His brow furrowed as he turned another page, his jaw tightened, his lips pressed into a line. The laughter around them grew awkward, fading as the seconds stretched too long. This wasn't how their leader usually played the game. Finally, Damien stopped. His gaze lingered on a particular drawing. A lone knight, battered but standing tall against a storm. Something flickered across his face, something Eli couldn't name. And then, just before handing it back, Damien bent close, too close. His lips hovered near Eli's ear, low enough that no one else could hear. "You should draw me sometime." Eli's stomach dropped so hard he thought he might be sick. Draw him? The words burned into his skin. They weren't teasing, not exactly, not mocking either. They were something else entirely, something softer, heavier. Eli's hands trembled as he snatched the sketchbook back, hugging it to his chest like a shield. He couldn't even look at Damien, couldn't risk seeing whatever expression might be in his eyes. But he could feel it, that gaze, lingering, the same way it had lingered before. Soft pause, whisper tone. This wasn't the first time Damien had crossed the line between cruelty and curiosity. Sometimes, in the middle of an insult, his voice would dip in a way that felt less like hatred and more like fascination. Sometimes his eyes followed Eli in class just a little too long, tracking the way his pencil moved, the way his lips pressed together when he was concentrating. Eli had always hated himself for noticing, for cataloguing every strange, inconsistent moment in the rhythm of their torment, for feeling his heart stumble, even once, when Damien's smirk faltered into something unreadable. And now, here was proof. Proof that Damien wasn't just tormenting him. He was watching him, seeing him. Eli's pulse hammered in his ears. His brain screamed at him to forget it, to bury the moment, to lock it away where it couldn't do any more damage. But his body betrayed him. His cheeks burned, his chest ached, his breath caught on the edges of something he couldn't admit. Damien straightened, his expression unreadable once again. To anyone else, it might have looked like he was simply done with the game. His friends, regaining their confidence, laughed again and dragged him away. But Eli knew. He knew because just before Damien turned, their eyes met. For the briefest second, Eli saw something raw in Damien's gaze, not cruelty, not triumph, something else, something terrifying, longing. That night, Eli sat on his bed with the sketchbook open in front of him. He stared at the page where Damien's hand had lingered the longest, the lone night standing against the storm. His pencil hovered above the blank space beside it. He told himself not to. He told himself it was ridiculous, dangerous, pathetic, but his hand moved anyway, line by line, stroke by stroke. A figure began to take shape, broad shoulders, sharp jaw, eyes that burned too brightly. It was Damien. Eli hated himself for it, and yet he couldn't stop. From that moment forward, everything felt different. Every time Damien passed him in the hall, Eli felt his chest tighten, remembering that whisper. Every time their eyes met, he wondered if Damien remembered too. Every insult carried a strange, hidden weight. Every silence felt louder than before. Damien had cracked something open, and Eli didn't know how to put it back together again. Gentle narrator tone. This moment is where their story truly begins to change. In so many BL webtoons and yaoi manhwa, this is the spark, the instant when the wall between enemies shifts, revealing something far more complicated beneath. For Eli, it was confusion, fear, a secret thrill he despised himself for feeling. For Damien, it was denial, a mask slipping too quickly, a truth clawing its way out. Neither of them could undo what happened that day. And deep down, both knew it. It was the first crack in the mask Damien wore, the first glimpse of something neither of them wanted to name. From there, the story of their entanglement began to shift. Damien's taunts became inconsistent. Some days he was cruel, pushing Eli against lockers, throwing sharp words like daggers. Other days, he hovered nearby, offering strange, quiet acts of protection, telling others to back off, lending Eli a pen, catching his gaze across the cafeteria. It was confusing, infuriating, dangerous, and yet there was no denying it anymore. Damien wasn't just tormenting Eli, he was drawn to him. This is the heartbeat of many BL webtoon romances, the tension of opposites colliding, the shy and the bold, the hidden and the exposed, the wound and the hand that both causes and heals it. But unlike the glossy pages of manhwa, this wasn't fiction for Eli. This was real, messy, painful, terrifying. He could feel it every time Damien's eyes found him across the classroom. It wasn't just hatred anymore, it wasn't just mockery. There was something else flickering underneath, something Damien couldn't seem to control. And that was worse than all the bullying combined. Because hatred, Eli could survive. He'd survived it for years, but this confusing mess of contradictions, softness hidden inside cruelty, stares that lingered too long, silence that spoke louder than insults. This was dangerous. Eli didn't want to believe it, didn't want to give Damien the satisfaction of knowing how deeply he'd gotten under his skin, didn't want to admit that every time Damien hovered near him, his pulse betrayed him. But when their eyes met, when Damien's mask slipped just enough to show the boy beneath the bravado, Eli felt something he shouldn't have. something that wasn't hate, something that felt like recognition. It happened one afternoon in class. The teacher was droning on about history dates, students half asleep, the late sun dripping gold across the desks. Eli was doodling quietly in the margins of his notes, trying to pretend he was invisible. And then he felt it, that heavy weight of being watched. His heart stuttered. Against his better judgment, he looked up. Damien's gaze locked with his. Not the usual smirk. Not the look of a predator about to pounce. No. This was different. His brows furrowed ever so slightly. His lips parted like he'd forgotten what he was about to say. His eyes, sharp, dark, usually so full of mockery, softened. Just for a second. There was a crack in the armor, a slip of the mask, a glimpse of the boy beneath the golden exterior everyone else admired. And in that instant, Eli's chest ached. He hated it. He hated that he noticed the way Damien's jaw tightened when he quickly looked away, pretending to scribble something down in his notebook. He hated that he noticed the nervous flick of Damien's pen, the way his leg bounced under the desk as if betraying restlessness he couldn't show. But more than anything, he hated himself for feeling something warm curl in his stomach. No, it wasn't warmth. It was fear, confusion. That had to be it. Whisper tone. Because there was no universe where Eli could feel anything else for the boy who had made his life hell. The tension built slowly, day after day. In the hallways, Damien still teased him, still shoved him lightly against lockers, still spoke with that sharp edge his friends expected. But his eyes told a different story. Sometimes, after an insult, Damien would linger just a moment too long, as if waiting for a response. Sometimes he'd hover nearby, pretending to laugh with his friends, but really watching Eli. Sometimes, when no one else was around, he'd look like he wanted to say something, and then bite it back at the last second. It was a push and pull Eli didn't know how to survive. He tried to ignore it, tried to bury himself deeper in his sketchbook, in his novels, in his silence, but Damien's presence was everywhere. A storm he couldn't escape. One afternoon, Eli was gathering his things at the end of class when Damien passed by his desk. Their shoulders brushed just barely, but enough to send sparks down Eli's arm. Damien muttered, low, so no one else could hear. "You never look at me when I talk to you." Eli froze. His throat went dry. He wanted to snap back, to say, "Why would I?" But his tongue betrayed him, tangled in confusion. By the time he found the words, Damien was already gone, swallowed into the sea of students. The message, however, lingered. Damien noticed. Damien cared. And Eli couldn't stop thinking about it. Gentle but tense narration tone. This is the dangerous beauty of so many yaoi romance manhwa and BL webtoon love stories, the moment when the line blurs. When hatred becomes obsession, when cruelty masks desire, when the enemy's gaze burns too hot to ignore. But Eli wasn't a character on a page. This wasn't some fictional trope he could close the book on. This was his real life. And every confusing, terrifying moment with Damien was digging its claws deeper into him. Weeks passed and the tension grew unbearable. Sometimes Damien would go days without speaking to him, as if retreating back into the safety of cruelty's shadow. Eli would almost breathe in relief, until it happened again. A look, a word, a brush of fingers as Damien handed back a pen Eli didn't remember dropping. Each encounter was messy, unpolished, real, and each one left Eli wondering the same dangerous question. Was he imagining it? Or was Damien truly wanting something more? The breaking point came one late evening. Eli had stayed behind in the art room, finishing a project. The classroom was quiet, dimly lit by the orange glow of sunset filtering through the blinds. He thought he was alone, until the door creaked open. Damien. He stood there, framed by the fading light, his usual confidence nowhere to be seen. For once, he looked uncertain. "What are you doing here?" Eli asked, trying to keep his voice steady. Damien shrugged, stepping inside. "Forgot something." His voice was low, almost hesitant. Eli turned back to his work, refusing to engage. His heart, however, was thundering. Minutes passed. The silence stretched. And then Damien spoke again. "You always look different when you draw." Eli's hand froze mid-stroke. He looked up slowly, disbelieving. Damien was watching him again, watching him too closely, too intensely. No smirk, no mockery, just that same raw, unguarded expression Eli had seen in stolen moments. Eli's chest tightened. "Stop it," he whispered. "Stop looking at me like that." Damien swallowed, his throat bobbing, his fists clenched at his sides. For once, he didn't fight back with words. He just looked like he was standing on the edge of something he couldn't control. And Eli knew. He knew deep down that this wasn't just imagination. This was real, messy, painful, terrifying. Because Damien didn't just hate him. Damien wanted him. And Eli, against every ounce of reason, felt something dangerous stirring in return. This was the moment he realized the story wasn't just bully and victim. It was the shy and the bold, the hidden and the exposed, the wound and the hand that both caused and healed it. And no matter how much Eli wanted to deny it, his heart had already begun to betray him. Something dangerously close to longing. Gentle transition tone. This is where the heart of our yaoi manhwa-inspired love story begins. Tense, emotional tone. The more Damien tried to fight it, the worse it got. His friends noticed first. Why did he always pick on Eli? Why did he hover around him more than anyone else? The teasing started to backfire, not on Eli, but on Damien himself. "Man, you're obsessed with him," one teammate laughed after practice. "What, you got a crush?" The locker room roared with laughter. Damien's jaw tightened, his fists clenching. He shoved the guy, denied everything, but inside, the truth scared him more than any rumor. Yes, he was obsessed. But not in the way people thought. For Eli, life was just as confusing. Every time Damien's footsteps echoed down the hallway, his body tensed, waiting for cruelty. Yet sometimes, what came instead was kindness. A textbook dropped into his hands, a seat saved in class, a fight broken up when others cornered him. Whisper tone. It felt like Damien was playing a game. But what if it wasn't a game at all? The breaking point came one rainy afternoon. School had ended, the halls were emptying, and Eli stayed late to return books to the library. Outside, the storm raged. As he hurried through the courtyard, umbrella barely holding, a voice called out behind him, "Eli!" He froze. It was Damien, soaked to the skin, his basketball bag slung over his shoulder. "What do you want?" Eli snapped, more exhausted than afraid. Damien didn't answer at first. He just stood there, rain dripping down his hair, his chest rising and falling like he'd run a mile. Finally, he said it. The words Eli never expected. "I don't hate you." Beat, it was simple, broken, vulnerable, and it shattered everything Eli thought he knew. From that day, the relationship entered dangerous new territory. They spoke in stolen moments, in stairwells, behind the gym, in the quiet of the library. Damien confessed piece by piece, like he was terrified of his own truth. How he'd always noticed Eli. How his bullying was a twisted way of hiding feelings he didn't understand. How being near Eli made his chest ache in ways he couldn't explain. Eli resisted. He remembered the years of pain too clearly. But the more Damien showed him his raw, unpolished heart, the harder it was to ignore. This was no simple enemies to lovers BL trope anymore. This was two boys clawing their way through years of hurt, trying to decide if love could bloom where cruelty once lived. The climax came one evening during a school festival. The courtyard glowed with lanterns, students laughing, music filling the air. Eli stood alone by the fountain, sketchbook in hand, drawing the lights. He thought he was safe, hidden in the crowd. Then Damien appeared. No friends, no mask, just Damien, heart-pounding, determination written all over his face. He stepped close, so close Eli could feel the heat of him against the cool night air. "I can't pretend anymore," Damien whispered. His voice cracked. "I like you, more than I've ever liked anyone, and I don't care who knows." The world seemed to still. Eli's breath caught. His hands trembled. He wanted to run, to scream, to throw every cruel memory back at Damien's face, but instead, he whispered the truth his heart had been hiding. "Then stop hurting me. Beat, soft, slow." Damien's hand reached out, hesitant, trembling, and for the first time, Eli didn't pull away. The lantern swayed, the music soared, and in that fragile space between pain and forgiveness, their lips met. A kiss. The end of a war. The start of something terrifyingly real. In the weeks that followed, nothing was simple. There were whispers, rumors, challenges. Damien had to face his own friends. Eli had to learn to trust, but step by step, they built something fragile and new. Eli wasn't just the bullied kid anymore. He was someone loved, wanted, chosen. Damien wasn't just the bully. He was a boy who learned that love meant vulnerability, not cruelty. Their story wasn't perfect. No BL webtoon or yaoi manhwa ever is. But that's what made it real. It was about scars and healing, enemies and lovers, pain and passion intertwined. And through it all, one truth remained. Sometimes, the people who break us are the ones who can help us put ourselves back together, if they learn to love us the right way. So, what do you think? Was this story sweet, emotional, heartbreaking? Drop your reaction in the comments. Let's see if you'd forgive Damien like Eli did. And don't forget, subscribe for more BL story breakdowns, yaoi manhwa recaps, and gay love story narrations. Check the description for full story links and more BL recommendations.